to Blowing Smoke with Twisted Rico. I'm your host, Steve Ricardo, coming to you from the New Alliance Music and Art Complex in beautiful Union Square, Somerville, Mass. We're joined today in the studio once again by our guest, co-host, Dia. I was going to say Dia the Diva Ghosh, but I'm just going to say Dia Ghosh. And a little later, our special guest, Tim McFarland Jr. of Salem Research, LLC, who is here to talk about one of all of our favorite pastimes, weed.
Absolutely.
As in marijuana. You should see the smile on Herb's face right now because we are going to talk about weed. Right, Herb? Okay, but first, as some of you know, I've had my own music management company, which I started around 1996 while I was still working at A&M Records. I was discreet about it at the time, but the moment I started communicating with Sunshine Voles and Charlie Johnson, who was still at the time living in Salt Lake City, we were already planning for the future. When they, along with Julie Jensen, decided to move to Boston at my urging, 3.5 girls were born, and suddenly I was a manager. It was, however, years earlier while I was at Metal Blade Records in the late 80s and early 90s that I was talking with a few different people, musicians, that were in bands and didn't have managers. And I started thinking I can help these people. And that's when it started clicking off in my head. I think I can be a manager. Some of those people actually became pretty big in the music world. Dave Smalley, who previously was in DYS, Stag Nasty, and the first version of All. And him and I spent a lot of time together in the early days when he was getting Down by Law going, which is a band that I believe has like 7 records out. Jennifer Finch had a band called L7. You might have heard of them. We became friends, and I started spending more time with her, and I was thinking, maybe I can manage an all-girl band. Never know. Then, of course, there was Inga Lurie, who I met after a chance meeting with Keith Morris of the Circle Jerks. He gave me a demo of this band called the Nymphs, and I fell in love on the first listen, and I started talking to Inga regularly, and we spoke on the phone almost every day for a while, and I went to all her shows in Hollywood. I was intrigued with working with all those bands, but I was firmly implanted in the music business at the time, and I didn't know if I could balance working at a label and managing a band, so I didn't pursue any of it at the time, and I took a job at Third Stone Music after I left Metal Blade. I was there for a few years, then I went to A&M Records. I probably would have never left A&M if my apartment in Queens didn't get burglarized when I was out at an all-day concert, the Horde Festival. I was with my girlfriend at the time, Ardra, and we came home and somebody wiped the apartment out. So I was very distraught about that. And when I told my boss, Richie Gallo, at A&M, he suggested that I move to Boston and I could work out of the Polygram office there. It sounded like a good idea at the time to go back home because I hadn't lived in Boston since I left there in 1984, like 12, 13 years before that. But it wasn't a good idea. It was a disaster. They seemed to be upset and threatened by the fact that I was there. I should say it was more like the sales manager and the sales people that didn't want me around. I had a great relationship with Dee Dee Kearney, but things went further south when she left the company. I thought Richie had done me a favor by letting me work there, but it turned into like a rough time. But I did get over the dreadful burglary experience, so that was good. It didn't work out for me a few years later, and then, following the couple of years that since I'd met Sunshine and Charlie and Julie, they moved to South Boston. I said, move to Boston and I'll help you. They did. And that's when we found Susan Luton and 3.5 girls were born. And my whole management dream became a reality. And after shuffling both gigs for about a year, I left A&M and became a full-time manager. Even though I had the connections to get 3.5 girls rolling, it was a little bumpy because I didn't really know how to be a manager. It was on-the-job training, but they reached a level of success in Boston and got signed by Curve of the Earth Records. It's really funny because Curve of the Earth Records is Alvin Long's record label, and that's how far Alvin and I go back to 1996 when he signed my band to a deal. And they became a local fan favorite in Boston before self-imploding, like some bands do. And from that point on, I built a stable of bands, which I not only managed but booked. It was really the only way to get any income, which was sparse. But bands like the Ape Hangers and Caged Heat made me proud. And they were great bands. And, of course, I went through a lot of bands over the years to come, but long relationships with the Charms, the Love Me Nots, and Continental allowed me to survive those bumps. And to this day, I still dabble and give a lot of bands advice. Management is not easy. You have to have a certain temperament to do it. And I have often told people you should probably get a psychology degree before you become a rock manager. And that's my little story. Okay, Herb, let's play a song. This is Caged Heat on the Sly from the second self-titled Caged Heat album.
He was a forgotten son. She was such a lonely one. Never thought they sell their souls for rock and roll. That's no lie, you never can tell. You never can tell.
was Caged Heat from the 2004 self-titled album recorded by the late Andrew Mazzoni at High and Dry Studios in Cambridge, which of course is the studio of the legendary band Morphine. The track featured Chili Kurtz on vocals and guitar, the late Alan Devine on guitar, Bo Berenger on bass, Paul Myers on drums, Jimmy Ryan on mandolin, and the great Juliana Hatfield on background vocals. And it seemed like a fitting song for this segment. Please welcome Tim McFarland Jr. to the Blowing Smoke with Twisted Rico podcast.
Hello.
Before I bring Tim on, and of course Dee is here too, I just want to give you a little background on Tim. Tim recently moved from Raleigh, North Carolina to Salem, Mass. Back in November 2019. He has a Medicaid background in pharmacy analytics and switched jobs when he moved up here, lost the position in January, and then founded Salem Research in February. Then the virus hit. Ugh. Salem Research LLC was founded with a simple goal of increasing affordability and accessibility of better health through medical cannabis. Since the feds aren't legalizing right now, we rely more heavily on direct consumer feedback to drive research. Those are the words of Tim. The goal is to integrate traditional healthcare with cannabis healthcare. Our patient database has already gone live and anyone can join right now. Our newsletter updates will be going out to our first participants starting in August. Due to COVID-19, licensing is a little more difficult to complete. In the meantime, you can keep up to date with us, and when the studies are posted. I had a lot of trouble reading that. I'm sorry. Anyways, how did I do, Tim? Did I cover everything?
Yeah, that was great. That was perfect. So essentially, we are currently recruiting participants to basically get their feedback on why they get high and how it helps them. More than just, getting high for recreational purposes. I want to see why it helps some people sleep, why it helps some people clean, why it helps some people relax, and why it causes panic attacks in other people. So that's essentially what I study in a nutshell.
I'm on board with that. There's just a couple more things here I want to read you, and then Dee is going to join us in the conversation. Tim enjoys figuring out how to make people, quote, a smarter kind of high. Salem Research is just a portal for the feedback he collects. Here is a quote that he sent us, which we can elaborate on. Quote, I look for trends in data reported by patients consuming different strains, doses, formulations, batches, cannabinoid. I was worried I couldn't say that, but I think I said it right. Cannabinoid. It's a speed metal band from Canada. I'm just kidding. They should be. Profiles and even flavors. I gather how they help or do not help people meeting certain criteria and providing real patient-driven feedback directly to the healthcare industry without them having to rely on federal funding. And Tim does this by, one, traveling when he can to find rare strains and cannabinoids. I said that right. He lets people try his stash whenever possible. I got some, man, when he came in, so I'm going to be trying that stash in a little while myself.
Sounds like you might have already tried it.
No, I didn't try it yet. Analyzing potential benefits of various formulations and telling stories. And you got quite a story. What do you think about this, Dia?
Well, I mean, you do have quite a story. When we were talking outside, you said that you started off in the pharmacy world, like that was your first job.
That's right.
So that's kind of where you're coming in from.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was in high school, I was fortunate enough to get a job inside of a pharmacy as a cashier, and I really developed early on a really comprehensive understanding of how the pharmacy program or pharmaceutical industry as a whole works altogether at a very young age. So I also was working in a very low income area, so I saw a very, very heavy Medicaid population in there, Medicare population. So those are indeed socialized programs. So I really developed that sense from an early age. So kind of going into the future, I worked in a pharmacy for 7 years, and then I kind of saw that the pharmaceutical industry is kind of different in the sense that it's too expensive. A lot of other things are happening in the pharmaceutical industry that is needing change, and then moving up here and starting Salem Research, I've realized that cannabis has a much bigger impact. Massachusetts is a state that not only has recreational and medical marijuana, but they have Harvard, they have Tufts, they have a lot.
They
of
have
other
Alvin Long. We have a lot.
They have people that enjoy smoking weed, such as yourselves. And
Yes,
I
we
want
do.
that feedback. I want to know how people use weed to help them and take it and put it in a quantitative manner, be able to actually help people in a more realistic and a more data-driven purpose and a data-driven background.
So I'll start with my second question first then, actually, where we are. What kinds of questions are you asking? What kinds of data are you collecting to suggest that a smarter kind of high? You know, like I was like, I don't know what you mean by that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the flower itself, when you smoke it, it actually has many different cannabinoids in there. Though some do say
Well, I was
cannabinoids.
way off.
Some people do say. I enjoy them, but anyway. But yes, so there's could be 8 to 12 to 15 different cannabinoids testing
8
over
to 10 to 15 cannabinoids?
Exactly. They could be testing at anything from 0.1% upwards of 32%, which I actually have a 32% joint with me right now.
You should have said that.
So what
with
does that
Herb here.
mean? Well, what does
So-
that mean? Like when you say like 32% versus, 3%.
A lot
So
of weed.
Well, no, a different high.
Yes.
I'm assuming a different high and not a lot of weed. It's the same amount of weed.
So what I do is I actually analyze the cannabinoid interdependencies. So that means that if you have 33% THC, I want to see what else is in that weed besides just THC.
Okay.
Because that is actually what makes you a different kind of high. So everybody talks about sativas and indicas, and that's actually a biological factor. The genus is cannabis, and the species sativa, and the species is indica. Most everything nowadays is crossbred between the two. Kind of what you hear in traditional pharmacies, or traditional dispensaries. But yes, and so when you look at the label and the product packaging, like this one right here, you'll see the breakdown of each of the cannabinoids, and that's what I study. So if you have 33% THC, and you have, say, 2% CBN, I know that that's actually more than likely going to cause you to be tired, and you're wanting to sleep rather than be awake, and more so used for relaxing rather than being creative. Something with CBG and THC, like your upper joint that I gave you, that is actually going to be more for your creativity, for songwriting or being artistic and things like that. Yes. So that's actually the data that I'm actually getting from patients saying, okay, well, this made me feel this way. And then I say, okay, well, what was in the package I got from the dispenser? What was on the label? What was on the certificate of analysis that was behind the dispensaries that they... And then I look at those numbers and I say, okay. And I've been doing that for quite a while now, and I've noticed some very interesting patterns. So in return, I can then go to people and give the weed that I have and say, oh, well, you have trouble sleeping. You want to be more creative, try this. And then give me feedback.
And all of this is just from data and not from biology.
Exactly.
And so-
There are biological factors that play into that,
Right.
but that is far from my expertise. Those are actually the people that I want to work with. I want to
Got
work
it.
with growers that can actually breed certain strains that are high in certain cannabinoids. Therefore, in return, I can then test it and see how that affects certain.
Well, I guess that's what I'm curious about, like the effects of people. Like, how are you measuring the effects on people? And yeah, like how are you?
Yeah. So people provide their feedback to me in formulation. So I actually ask them, okay, well, if you smoke a full gram joint or a half gram, what does that do to you? Does that make you sleepy? Does that make you wide awake? What is your favorite type of high? What is your favorite type of experience? What do you do right before? What do you do right afterwards? Eat before you smoke? Do you drink water before you take any kind of vitamins or any other things that may counteract with this medicine? And then I actually quantify that into data, in a big database that actually spits out results at the end and tells me, okay, well, here's a strain that tests in certain percentage of cannabinoids. Here's your database of recipients that actually have reported X and Y symptoms. All right, well, let's if this actually works for this particular person.
So it's behaviorally based.
Actually,
still.
absolutely.
And self-report.
Yeah.
So do you recommend, like, I think I know the answer to the question, but if someone has a lot of anxiety or they're depressed, I mean,
Yeah, everyone's talking about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So anxiety, I'm actually currently looking for very rare African strains that are high in THCV and THCVA, and that particular cannabinoid has been shown to be a little bit more psychedelic than psychoactive.
huh.
Ooh, what's the difference between the two? Someone asked me this yesterday, and I couldn't really explain
V
it.
and VA?
Well, the psychedelic and psychotropic.
So psychoactive or
Psychoactive.
right, so psychedelic is going to be more closer to your visual and borderline hallucinatory experiences. So if you have something like edibles, for example,
Right.
and I think everybody's experienced eating edibles at some point where they've gotten way too high and
Purposely or
Uh-huh.
accidentally.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I connect flour that's high in THCV. THCV has a boiling point of 423 degrees as opposed to THC, which has a boiling point of 300 degrees. So if you bake an edible, like a brownie, for way too long, you're going to start seeing that degradation of THC, meaning the THC is going to start slowly disappearing or degrading into another cannabinoid, which is
Really?
another thing that I want. And then what's left is, if you use Durban, could be the higher temperature THCV, could be more psychedelic, but that's the thing that I need to study. THCV is not common enough on the East Coast to actually isolate and make edibles out of in a realistically affordable approach. So that's actually one of the things that led me out to California on my trip not too long ago.
Edibles. I for some reason I can only do a little bit of an edible, but I knew a girl that I was friends with in her early 20s. I saw her eat like 4 gummies at one time, and I was thinking, if I ever ate 4 gummies at one time, I'd be dead. I mean,
You wouldn't be dead. You'd just be
I'd be
passed
like
out.
hallucinating
You'd be
and
sleeping.
stuff, because a couple times I've gotten too high off of edibles, and I've ended up like just having to go for a long walk or something just to come down, So
maybe an
different
edible-
people are affected differently by them, basically.
CBD actually does help with that anxiety that THC can create. So maybe a 4-to-1 ratio of THC to CBD in a gummy form would be something good for someone like you. One of the things that I'm studying, the same type of thing with THCV. So if I can get THCV isolated to a point to study it, I need to be able to have a cannabinoid that actually is going to counteract THCV as well, because we don't need a very psychedelic output with no ability to counteract it.
You
right?
could just take mushrooms if you want to have a real psychedelic
Right.
There you
output,
go.
right?
Exactly.
Right, exactly. Why smoke weed? Yeah.
Yeah, what's the point?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone's trying to find their own level of smoking, that they don't get too high or they get high enough or whatever. That's what I look for. Like you mentioned art, Dee is an artist, I'm an artist. It really helps if you have the right kind of buzz on, right, Dee?
Absolutely. Like, it helps you get out of your head and get out of your mind and into your body sometimes.
Herb wants to ask a
Yeah.
question.
I was
Sorry.
gonna ask, are you just testing flour, or are you also doing other products? Like, are you doing shatter and like dabs and all that stuff?
Yes, absolutely. So I am doing concentrates, cartridges, edibles, tinctures, capsules, pretty much anything. Anything that is ingestible or inhalable. So I actually study the psychological effects behind cannabis. So I don't really get into the topical realm, but other than that, I'm game. So.
I just wanted to give some of our listeners this info now, and then we can talk some more. The website is www.salemresearch.org. There's an Instagram page at Salem Research LLC, and there's a Facebook page, Salem Research LLC. Do you want people to reach out to you, and what do you? I mean, how's
So right now, I'm actually just collecting participants on my database on my website. My goal is to work with a couple of testing labs and research places that are in New England. The virus has kind of hindered a lot of my
Yeah.
work. Yeah. I did a lot of strain hunting across the country when the country seemed to open up for about a week and a half and then shut back down. So my work has really constricted me to Maine and Vermont, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts right now. But
New
right-
England.
yeah. But,
What about Connecticut, man?
I have not made my way down to Connecticut yet, but I intend to do some work in all 33 states that have some form of medical marijuana program.
So, okay, I didn't know that. So 33 states have it. What are the other 17 states doing?
Nothing. Being very boring.
Give me an
and
example
angry.
of a state that doesn't have any marijuana dispensaries.
North Carolina.
North Carolina, your
Is
home
that why you
state.
moved?
Yes. No, really. I actually left North Carolina. A project that I was working on got canned, and I accepted a position up here. And
Sorry, we're banging, and Herb's going, what's all that noise, man? And we didn't smoke any weed or anything, man. We're like just
nobody
banging
wanted
on the
to say
table.
anything because we're talking about weed, and we wanted to make sure that we were not the only one hearing it.
So, I thought North Carolina was becoming a more bluer state. I mean, why haven't they legalized marijuana yet?
Well, that is an excellent question, and I have absolutely no clue. I think that it needs to be done down there. They are actually 46th, 47th in the country for healthcare. They didn't expand
horrible.
Medicaid this time around last
And
year.
they have a Democratic governor now too, but he's not getting anything accomplished, is he?
Yeah, he gets blocked by a lot of Republicans in the state. So,
Yeah.
unfortunate. The Department of Health and Human Services moved to a different county, and a lot of political things happened, and they no longer were able to expand Medicaid. So that was a big impetus of me moving up to Massachusetts.
Right.
And
You
then I
picked a
just
good
continued-
state to come to.
Yeah.
Salem's a good town too.
Oh,
I'd
I
love
love
to
it.
live in Salem. It's hard to find affordable places up there, though.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. It took a very long time. It took about 7 months to find a place in Salem, but I'm glad to be there. I see a lot of tourists actually going through the city right now, and most of them have masks, but I still kind of see the spotty people without masks, and it gets a little worrisome.
Any of those cool patterns you come across you want to tell us about, dude?
Any cool what?
Oh, the patterns that you were talking about earlier,
the data.
some of the data that you kind of see.
Yeah,
Patterns, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Patterns.
So
Sorry, we have Cheech and Chong here today. Cheech,
Right.
Chong.
Yes, absolutely. So I'll give you this. So most flour is mainly THC. So one of the things I'm looking at is flour that is not mainly THC. So there's a strain called Doug's Varin that's out in California. That was an impetus. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I wanted to grab that lighter from him. Sorry about that. Audio, man.
Yeah. Yeah. So they actually have a THCV strain out there, and I drove a couple thousand miles to go get it.
Where in California?
So they have 7
That's
places.
3,000 miles, by the way. Where in California?
It was actually at 7 different places, but they're based out of Oakland.
Northern California.
Yeah. They have a lot of places in Northern California, but there were 7 places in Southern California that I dropped by, found a strain high in THCV, but the damn thing was packaged a year before I bought it. So it was
Ooh. Yeah,
very
I remember
dry.
you talking about how people don't store their weed right. It loses its strength. Tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So THC degrades into CBN over time. It's all of these are called phytocannabinoids, so they are created and destroyed by light. So proper storage is extremely important.
Wow. Did you know that, Herb, that you have to store your weed in a dark place?
No.
Now
Yeah.
you do.
So, so yeah, when it degrades into CBN, that's where you get things like, all right, well, I smoked this joint that's been sitting here for a while, like the Mexican swag that was available 20 years ago. That's exactly what it makes you sleepy, makes you pass out.
So
the next
the
morning you
weed,
have a
when the
headache.
weed loses its strength, it makes you more tired.
Yes.
That's good info for our listeners to know.
That is pretty accurate. It's
So
also,
you have to hurry up
there's a
and
lot of-
smoke all you weed you can get? Is that the moral of the story?
Yes, smoke it
You're-
all
you're
in
storing-
one day, no
right,
matter
you're
how
s-
much the quantity. And
you're
then let me
storing
know
it.
how that affects you. Like,
Oh,
sign
God.
up on my website and let me know. If you smoke an ounce in one day, please let me know.
Wow, do you think that there probably are people that do smoke an ounce in one day?
Yeah, it probably is. And if you're
I wonder
listening
if
and
any.
you
I
smoke,
wonder if any are in this room.
No.
Herb, sorry, I'm picking on Herb.
I take you for a concentrates guy.
Yeah, I enjoy edibles a lot more nowadays.
Edibles. What do you take as far as edibles go?
I should stick with the like really small stuff because they're good for work, you know.
Yeah.
So
Gummies?
yeah, gummies. But let's get down to some important stuff right here. I want to listen to Black Sabbath's Paranoid. What am I smoking?
Let's smoke.
Oh,
Hey, listen, I got tips, by the way. I cut some tips off so we can
We're-
actually share.
We're
approval.
taking the name Blowing Smoke with Twisted Rico to the next level. We're actually going to blow some smoke.
You know, I thought this was a weed podcast at first. I think you misled me originally.
You know, it's really funny. I think there are people out there. When I first put up the Blowing Smoke Twitter account, all these like pot companies and stuff all started following me. You know, High Times Magazine. Hey, we'll retweet everything that Blowing Smoke with Twisted Rico puts up there on his Twitter page. You know, what are you handing around? What are you handing out here?
So, an easy way not to get Rona.
I'm really trying to help Tim out here. He's trying to like bring
It's-
the whole
it's-
board down.
It's because
Oh,
I haven't
ooh.
smoked weed in a little while.
Uh-oh.
I need to concentrate on not tripping over everything.
Wait a minute. You're
There you
putting
go.
something on the... Oh.
So, I've also been told
Oh.
I'm a little resourceful.
People that
I
are
guess, and,
can't see this is interesting. You have these little... What would they be called? They look like a straw. You put them at the end of the joint, so when you pass it around,
That's
everyone gets their own
Gets
straw.
that is
That's
exactly what it is.
brilliant.
COVID.
You can share again.
COVID-proof
There we
weed.
go.
You can share again. That's awesome.
COVID-proof weed, ladies and gentlemen. Brought to you by Tim McFarland,
Yeah.
Salem
That's right.
Research, LLC.
That's right. I will say, there's a dispensary, Northeast Alternatives, down in Fall River, and they actually have little chillums that are pre-packed with just 1/3 of a gram of weed in it.
Those things are awesome, dude.
It's
I
amazing.
I gave them out for Christmas this last year, dude.
What?
Yeah.
I didn't get one. I guess we
I
didn't
want
know
one
each
next
other
year,
that
yeah,
well at
yeah.
Christmas. But next Christmas, Cheech, Chong's going to need some of that, okay?
Well, you go into these places, especially in Northeast, and you actually the places like that are really enjoyable because they have a very good variety. And that's so I go in there and I look for strains like Durban Poison. So I actually went in there and specifically asked for that. And the person.
This is the place in Fall River?
Yeah, Fall River.
Fall
and-
River. What
Yeah.
a weird place to say that it's the hub of the mass weed, Fall River.
Well,
You know,
there's-
that place, I'll tell you, is actually the first place that I really just found a weed that helped me sleep. Member Berries is actually where it all began. It's actually called Member Berries.
Member berries?
So what was it about member berries that you liked so much?
So before I even moved up to Massachusetts, that was the first place I went to get recreational weed. And I actually had insomnia for a very long time. I just could not sleep. It was just a very big thing. I had just absolutely just kind of given up on it. And I went down there and got a couple of pre-rolls.
Sorry,
Sorry. I
people
will
that
totally-
can't see this, Tim keeps banging on the table. He's just trying to make Herb's life completely miserable. Now he's going to have to give Herb more weed before he leaves.
Well, with a name like
Herb's
Herb, I
like,
think...
keep banging on that fucking table. Oops, I dropped the F-bomb. Sorry about that, folks.
But yes, indeed.
I know this is a serious topic and I keep turning into something goofy, but forgive
Well,
me.
I mean, we're talking about weed and healthcare combined. So, I've gotten that for as long as I've been doing this. So it's not a bad thing that we sit around and talk about healthcare, get stoned, and get lost in
It's
what we're
really,
talking about.
as far as weed goes in this country, it's just like everything else, right? It's a two-party thing, right?
Exactly. It's difficult. It's difficult to get anything done, and just the simple fact that only parts of our country have legalized marijuana, and not only that, but you can get varying degrees of arrested for said weed.
Horrible.
It's absolutely disgusting that people are still locked up in this country for things that are legal
I have a
within the
question.
same country.
Sorry, I have a question. So I guess I keep thinking back to, you know, your intention, your goal is to better healthcare, to provide better healthcare for underprivileged and underserved areas. Why is it that weed is the answer to that?
Weed has not been funded enough for research. And that's the main impetus behind what I'm doing. So the feds aren't really paying for any kind of research with cannabis, but they're actually being done. These studies are actually being done at the National Institute of Health. They're actually being done under different guises, but not actually done by the people that consume it the most. So who else should we actually get this information from other than the people who actually consume it and have been consuming it for 75, 90, 103 years?
And I do think when you go on these trips all around Mass, you should take us with you so we can sample all the weed in Fall River, Oxford, Leicester, wherever the heck all these dispensaries are.
That I can do.
That sounds like a plan.
We'll have to get like a limo driver or something to drive us.
Yeah.
Because we're not going to be able to drive after this experience.
No, or have a conversation, I'm pretty sure.
Right.
But yeah.
But you'll be able to sleep, depending on...
I mean, I guess that was the goal, right?
The driver's going to be like, Dia, wake up. Tim, Steve, Herb, wake up, guys. We're at your... hello?
And I would wake up and say, your job is to drive. Please drive me while I do this.
I don't remember where I live, man. I can't remember if I live in Worcester or Somerville, man.
I'll just give the driver different
lost.
strains. Yeah, you know, hey, I really wanted to figure out if this is good for driving.
Hey, I got something for you, man. This whole gateway drug thing, that always bothered me, because I started smoking weed when I was a teenager, and I'm a lot older than that now. And I've always heard marijuana is the gateway drug. How are we going to get rid of that stigma that marijuana is a gateway drug? A gateway to what? Gateway to listening to Led Zeppelin 4 10 times in one day?
Actually, yeah.
Well,
or Black Sabbath, as Herb said earlier. Yeah, I like to get high and listen to Black Sabbath, sure.
The South is holding that up.
The South? You're blaming your own part of the country. They don't really know about the Civil War that ended, well, we're not going to get into that. I do want to ask you about the Confederate flag, but answer the question first.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's a reason I moved up here. Multiple reasons I moved up here. So, I can blame the South and be perfectly fine with doing that. But yeah, no, there's a lot of states that actually do not recognize weed as being beneficial in any form at all. And that is so far from reality, and it's been proven.
How about countries? Since we have someone here that's from another country, I wanted to ask you, Dia, what's marijuana in India? What's going on there with marijuana?
We'll smoke it. I mean, I don't know what you're asking.
Yeah, man, Kolkata's got a lot of good weed, man.
Actually, Kolkata, from what I remember, and this is ages ago, it wasn't easy to always get weed, and what you would get is swag, and so actually what people smoke in India is predominantly hash. You get better hash.
That's not bad.
Yeah, but it's a completely different high. It's a different feel. It's your levels of functioning are different, and I don't know how it's controlled. I don't know that it is because there aren't any dispensaries per se. You're still doing it the old way. I got presents.
Well,
that's hash.
Ooh, thank you.
Hey, I want some hash, man.
Thank you.
This is actually hash from Northeast Alternatives in Fall River,
Wow.
actually.
Oh,
Yes.
very cool.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
cool. Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah, someone named Lily actually gave me that to sample out. It's actually pretty good. So if you're interested,
Herb, can we
Thank
clear
you.
the schedule
Thank
for
you.
next week? I want Tim back on again next week. Forget about the porn show we're doing. We're going to do more marijuana next week, okay?
maybe we get high in the middle of two songs and see, how that affects your ability as a radio host.
That's something that like ultimately that's what the research will be able to do is find out what pot will be better for driving and what pot will be better for talking and all that stuff. That's like where you want to get to, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I've got about 5 different formulations right now that I'm working on and I'm studying. I've got one specifically for anxiety that's actually
I need
monitoring
that
the anxiolytic effects behind this particular combination of cannabinoids. I'm actually looking at one other one that's good for, my theory is that it's good for AntiHyperkinesis. So I'm actually looking at drugs like Adderall, Concerta, Ritalin, Vyvanse, things like that, and actually looking at how people take those drugs and comparing it to things like super sativas.
Oh, wow.
That are non-African based strains. So, and then I've got 3 other ones that are still kind of on my drawing board. And the intention behind all of that is I really want to get an actual ratio going that I can take it to places like Tufts in the city.
Now we know why. This is gonna. I hope people in North Carolina don't get mad at me for saying this, but now we know why Tim moved up here, because he's a smart kid, and he took all his smartness up to New England, where all the smart people are in the Harvard Yard and all that.
There you go.
Because you really know your stuff, man. I'm impressed.
Would you worry about like taking your research up to a place like Tough and just having them be like "Meh," and like not care?
Well, there are people that are interested in some of my stuff at Tufts without kind of, getting into further details.
The president of Tufts and I got high last week, but other than that, it's...
Don't sue me.
This has been a lot of fun, but I think we might have to wrap it up. But did you want to ask anything else, Dia?
I guess I'm going back to something that Herb said a little while ago, which was, at some point we'll have a strain for each activity, if you will, whatever activity we want to partake in. Why do we need that?
Because it's fun.
Why? I mean, but why
No.
isn't life fun without it? Like, I mean,
Sure.
I understand that some people need it and some people need to, but that's then to say that everybody is on some sort of drug of some sort, whether it's pharmaceuticals or whatever. Like, that's just how we, like, why is it that
Right.
we need to be altered?
Yeah, it goes back to the original affordability and accessibility, so we have to fight constantly to get the medication and the healthcare that we need and we deserve, even in Massachusetts being the state that's known for its really good healthcare.
More liberal, yeah.
Yeah, and then, this
Still
whole
not great,
concept
yeah.
behind Salem Research started back in February, but then the virus hit immediately thereafter. And,
That
I've
damn
realized,
virus.
healthcare, mental health care especially, is going to be really, really difficult thing to deal with in the next few months and the next
sure.
few years because
For
of this
sure.
virus. So I kind of just want to see what I can do as far as transitioning traditional healthcare into cannabis healthcare, and that's the lines that I'm going.
Well, you're helping our podcast, I'll tell you that, because I don't know what shape we're going to record another episode today, and I don't know what'll happen in between episodes. But the next one could be a little interesting,
We'll
Yeah.
find
to
out.
say the least.
Talk a little bit slower.
But this has been fantastic,
It's been
man.
awesome.
Thank you. Let me
Thank
give
you.
this info once again. It's www.salemresearch.org. The Instagram page is at Salem Research LLC, and the Facebook page is Salem Research LLC. Thank you very much, Tim.
Thank you.
Been
Thanks for having me.
awesome having you on.
Thanks, Tim.
Okay, I'm just going to move along here. We have a new sponsor for this show, so I want to tell you a little bit about the Moonbeam Cafe. Really psyched to have the Moonbeam as our sponsor. The cafe is located at 636 Allegheny River Boulevard in Oakmont, PA, which is just outside of the city limits of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. They have a great Instagram page at Moonbeam Cafe that we follow. And now the very, very, very best part is our unofficial, who became official, Blowing Smoke with Twisted Rico model, Nina, runs the joint.
Woohoo!
It's Nina's Cafe. Is that cool or what? Nina
Congrats,
can be
Nina.
found all over our Patreon page, by the way, because Nina was nice enough to send us photos of herself wearing a Blowing Smoke with Twisted Rico shirt and a bikini bottom. If you want to get our attention, that's how you do it. She's also all over the Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook pages. Nina and I met at Baby Loves Tacos in Pittsburgh, which she was a regular, and I found out then that she was a huge music fan, mostly because she's a Led Zeppelin. She loved Led Zeppelin. She also has a thing for Stevie Nicks as well. And what I really love about her is she's also a big fan of 60s actress Sharon Tate. And if you know who Sharon Tate is, then you know what I'm talking about. Nina could have easily been one of the actresses on the Valley of the Dolls if she was around in the 60s, but she wasn't. But as we like to do with our sponsors, Nina has sent over some copy for us to read. So I'm going to read this to you right now. Moonbeam Cafe is a traditional Roman Italian-style cafe famous for our delectable biscottis and espresso-based drinks. We strive to handcraft our drinks with only the highest quality ingredients and doing so with a big smile on our faces. Our main mission is to not only create the best coffee in Pittsburgh, but to spread as much kindness as possible. She's so nice. One of our customers said, quote, Moonbeam is the only place in the city that serves a side of kindness with every cup. And that really sums it up. Be sure to follow Moonbeam on Instagram and Facebook and get a glimpse of what they do every day. Stay magical and stay caffeinated. I do know from following Moonbeam and Nina that they also brought coffee and pastries to health workers at hospitals in Pittsburgh during this pandemic, which is something we admire and appreciate very much. Nina is the best. Thank you, Nina, and thank you to the Moonbeam Cafe for your support. Before I leave, I want to thank our engineer, Dorchester's own Herb Morsiglio. Ow! Who all of a sudden participates in the show every week, and we like that. And also our patrons whose monthly contributions keep the Blowing Smoke with Twisted Rico podcast going. Kevin, Ellie, Maria, Chris W., Heather, Sue, Matt, Chris, Dave, Brian, Benjamin, Lee, Chad, Christopher, and Kim. And if you want to join the support cast, you can go to the patreon.com/Twisted Rico, where for only $1 a month you can support our podcast. Thank you, Dia. Dia's going to be back with me on our next show. And by the time you hear the next show, you would have heard a lot of Dia, because we'll have 3 shows out by that.
Exciting.
It'll be awesome. Thanks again, Tim. Please contact me at twistedrico@gmail.com. Follow the Instagram page at Twisted Rico, or on Twitter at Blowing Smoke BS. There is also a Blowing Smoke with Twisted Rico Facebook page, and you can find some of our shows, and probably this one, on YouTube. Thanks to Herb. This is Blowing Smoke with Twisted Rico. I'm your host, Steve Ricardo. Till the next time we say goodbye, keep the rock and roll alive. And yes, we love you, Busy